Okay, so what I'm doing here is choosing my basic brush, and then I'm going to be drawing the female face. And this lesson isn't so much about the final rendered result. It's more about placement, where to place things like the ears, the eyes, the nose, the eyebrows, mouth, and things like that. So this won't exactly be a finished drawing, but it will show you where the placement of all of those things should go. And then you can pretty much just rotate this wherever you want, once you get the basic principles down. And as you can see, I've got my markers laid out there for the eyes, the nose, the mouth, and then the chin. And these right here, this is what I use to mark the sides of the eyes. And as you can see there, I'm drawing 2 lines down the side of the center line. And that's because there's my middle eye. The eyes, basically the space of them is 3 eyes across the front of the face. So you got obviously the 2 eyes, and then you have the 1 eye space in the middle. And that just helps you keep, for everybody it's different. Different faces have different eye space and things like that. You'll notice some people have eyes that are closer together, others have eyes that are further apart. So it's just a loosely based principle that you want to follow. And it depends on which character you've got. And so yeah, you can see I'm penciling in everything there. I'm penciling in the chin. I've already got the mouth and nose roughly placed. The eyes are roughly put in there. And you can see how I'm sort of following the guideline that I set out about the mouth, the cheekbones, and where the eyes are at. And I'm just cleaning up the chin here a little bit. Okay, so now that everything is roughly in place, I'll end up going back through and I'll see what parts are pretty close to what I like and which parts aren't, and I'll sort of darken in where I've got everything and try to fix it and basically sculpt it into being where I want it to be on the face. So you can see I'm going to work here on the eye and moving over here to the other eye. Okay. And I'm just laying in the eyelids real easy. Laying in a little bit of the nose. And this line I'm drawing right here, I call this the I don't know, this is like the brow line, the hairline. Brow line and hairline. I use it for both. And that right there I just put in was for the eyebrows. And the eyebrows typically go, or the ears, I'm sorry, typically go from the eyebrows to the nose. So you can see how I'm sort of drawing that straight down there from the eyebrow line. And I try to lay all of the lines on a curve, because if you just draw them flat and straight across, the face isn't really shaped completely flat like a box. I mean, you can do that for some characters if you want, but on average it helps to have a little bit of the curved line, because nobody's face is 100% symmetrical, so you do want that bit of a curve. And you can see at first I almost stayed confined to the 2 lines going alongside the center line of the face, but then she ends up with a bit of a small mouth. And some characters, like I said, again, these are all just basic principles that you want to have a standard for, but then you break those rules according to whatever character you're drawing. So I want her mouth to be a little bit wider than that. I don't want her to have such a narrow mouth. So for her, I'll end up dragging the edges of the mouth over to roughly a little past the beginning mark right there of the eye, for the corner mark of the eye right there. And you can see it just sort of helps her lips look, a little bit wider, a little bit fuller, but not super crazy or outlandish or anything like that. And again, I'm leaving this whole, typically I would erase this grid as I go, as I lay things out. But, working digitally, in Photoshop, you can sort of leave the framework there even on another layer if you want. Me, for this purpose, I've actually left the lines there to show how I'm doing it. And if I was doing an actual drawing this way, all on one layer, I wouldn't be leaving all of the traces of, the groundwork, the framework behind. I would just be erasing those as I go and cleaning it up. But I think it makes a better impact for the purpose of this lesson to just leave them in place so you can see what I'm doing here. Yeah, and right here I'm just cleaning up the skull, top of her head a little bit to show you, where see, now you can more clearly see where those edges were that came up from the chin to the points of the skull. You see, and right here I'm starting to I'm gauging like where I want to put in the eyebrows. And for me, sometimes I like to go a little bit crazy on the eyebrows. I don't like to keep them, really realistic looking or, super smooth, like just a line. I like to go in there and mess them up a little bit because I think that's one feature that you can just sort of play around with, and it doesn't absolutely have to be perfect. A lot of people have imperfect eyebrows, and some characters, you can cut a line through the eyebrow, or you can sort of mess them up on one side more than the other, or I don't know. I think it just helps them to have a more of an organic look to them. So I like getting a little bit crazy with the eyebrows. Yeah, right there I'm checking the edges of the eyes against the center line that I have there. And right here I'm marking in the nose, the edges of the nose. And I'm sort of darkening this spot in for the time being because, I'm showing that that's where the top of the nose would be that lightest part right there. The darker part would be where the nose begins to fade away downwards onto the face. So I end up taking that part away because I don't want to put a lot of rendering on the nose for this. And right here you can see I'm actually marking off, okay, this is where the center of the eye is. That's where I'm going to put the pupil, and these two lines I'm putting on either side of that is where the outside of the eye is going to be, the actual circle of the eye. There's the pupil, and then I'll put the iris there around it using those lines as the guide. And a lot of times I just, I go off of what looks right for that purpose. I don't really put the lines in on every single time. So this is just something that I mentally keep track of that I'm actually visually showing here. And I like to place the neck typically around where the eye mark is for a female. If it was for a male, I would go more to the jawline and to the cheekbone, like maybe even if they're really bulky, straight down below the ear, straight down below the head, the top of the skull, just right down. And that helps to give them a tougher look for males. But for the females, the thinner, bring the neck in a little bit because it helps make them look elegant. And basically the only reason I'm showing this whole rib cage and collarbone and shoulder layout is so that you know how to connect this head to the body. But again, I go right back to the face because that's not what this lesson's about. I was just doing that to be helpful so you know where to go from that point on. And then, yeah, I just end up cleaning it up a little bit here. I go in and erase those parts around the nose right there that I don't like. And then just clean it up around on the edges a little bit. And that's pretty much it for this. I give her a little bit of a highlight right here. Okay, so I hope that helps you with the different placement of the features on the face. And thank you for watching. Please like the video and comment and subscribe.